Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our legal system, our criminal justice system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we're very fortunate to have a guest who's involved intimately in a variety of issues down at the state capitol and part of a very large growing industry in the capital region, that being government relations and lobbying. And today we welcome Sean Doolin of the law firm Hinman Straub here in Albany, New York, to tell us something about the nature of his business. And welcome, Sean. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here today. And you are, as we know, a Colonie resident, family here in Colonie. And how did you get involved in the lobbying business?
That's a great question. My mother asks me that all the time. I actually am born and raised on Long Island and came up here to go to college at Siena, and then from Siena went on to Albany Law School and located in the state capitol. Obviously, the role of government is prominent in the education at both Siena and the law school. I started clerking at Hinman Straub in law school without any clear sense of whether I wanted to be a lobbyist, or a government lawyer, or some other type of lawyer. The firm itself is a general practice firm. Started working there in the bowels of the firm, so to speak, for a few years, and doing general healthcare work, general government work, some administrative law, but primarily firmly attached to the desk. And then after a few years, one of the senior partners asked me if I'd like to try this business of lobbying, and I said, sure, I'd give it a shot.
Well, it's certainly a dynamic opportunity for you, and you know that Albany, being the state capital of the Empire State, renders it one of the most significant capitals in our country. Many say only second to Washington, D.C., for a variety of reasons. And as a result, the significant nature of what goes on in the Capitol has an impact on all citizens here in the state of New York, and sometimes far beyond its borders as well.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, next to Washington, like the legal system, the New York courts, like the California courts, are trendsetters. The New York legislature, like California, next to Washington, are the preeminent governments in the country.
Well, and certainly it renders Albany a very exciting place for that purpose. And you did mention our court system, too, which is near and dear to me. And, of course, the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state of New York, is headquartered right here in Albany, New York, with a variety of other levels of courts here as well, the Appellate Division and the Third Department, and a variety of Supreme Court chambers are here as well, which makes it really a hotbed for law here in the area. And provides interesting opportunities for attorneys as well. And so, in essence then, what do you find yourself doing then in relation to government relations and lobbying? I mean, a lot of people are wondering how it all works and what do you do, and I think it'd be nice if we had a chance to hear about the nature and extent of what types of things you would do in this field.
Sure. Well, you know, in government, you know, there are three branches, as you know. There's the legislative branch, which creates the laws. There is the executive branch, which is the governor and the various state agencies, which administer the law. And then there's the judicial system, which interprets the creation and administration of the various state laws and regulations. With respect to the legislature, the role of the lobbyist, and I'm sure everyone has a perception of what a lobbyist is, some of which is deserved, some of which is a misperception or misconception. And I would characterize a lobbyist and their role in creating laws is as part education, educating a legislator as to the impact of a particular bill on the constituency or on a particular industry. And secondly, partially, it is advocacy, exercising a client's First Amendment rights of free speech and advocating, like an attorney would do in the courtroom, advocating your position with members of the legislature and the governor's office.
Well, I found even during my time in the state Senate back in the 80s as a chief counsel that oftentimes it was very helpful to be able to get more information on an issue by groups and representatives of various groups, because they could provide the legislator with the knowledge necessary to make an informed decision about a particular piece of legislation. It was really almost an adjunct to the staff that was there for the senator or legislator. So it was certainly always a big help. Do you find that oftentimes you'll get calls from offices, from legislative offices asking you to provide some input on a certain issue and how it would impact a particular issue if they pursued a particular piece of legislation?
Absolutely, all the time, all the time. And actually, you know, as a lawyer, as a lobbyist, you welcome those opportunities because it's a credit to the legislator to stop and take the time to understand the full ramifications of a particular issue, as opposed to just engaging down a path which might seem populist or popular to constituents, but might have a negative side effect that is unforeseen.
And I note that you've been with him and Straub, what, for about 20 years now? Now, the firm does a variety of different things besides merely governmental relations.
Sure.
Is that correct? What else is the firm involved in?
That's correct. There is a government relations department. There's a litigation department. There is a corporate department, trust and estates, healthcare, as well as insurance, and I want to make sure I'm not forgetting. I think that covers, and public employees representing some unions. And that actually, the breadth or depth of the firm is of tremendous aid in our representation in government relations, because you rely on those folks to provide particular expertise on a particular issue that gives clients the broadest possible representation.
You know, Mr. Straub, whose name is, of course, in the title of the firm, was legendary here as an attorney in and around the Capital Region. And when I was at Albany Law School, many years before you were at Albany Law School, I had made an appointment with him to see whether I could be engaged as a summer intern, I think, after my freshman year at Albany Law School. So I had my appointment all set up, and I was living down at the law school at the time, and I went down to State Street and with my Sunday best, and I went into the office, and it was being held for quite a while, and I didn't quite understand it, but came to learn that the Albany Law School student government representatives had been picketing earlier in the day outside the State Street office, objecting to a possible tuition hike, and he was the president of, or the chairman of our board of trustees at the time. So right away they were thinking, here's another Albany Law School student who's going to be causing trouble out front, and, and after about 20 minutes of screening, I did go in and have a chance to meet with him. Nonetheless, I did not spend my summer there, and instead Larry Cook, Judge Larry Cook, who was the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, actually decided to put me to work for the Office of Court Administration that summer, which was a great experience for me too. But I do recall being in Mr. Straub's office, and he had quite a presence too, and obviously it continues today.
Sure.
It does. Well, do you find that during the day you'll be at the Capitol every day, or how do you find your day in connection with lobbying?
That's a good question. A day in the life is actually partially spent, talking to clients, researching particular issues, drafting legislation, and then, or for that matter, working with state agencies either in interpreting their view of a particular legislation, or for that matter, in regulatory representation. And then once you have your ducks in a row and your ammunition, then you go up to the hill, so to speak, and have conversations with legislators advocating the position of various clients. And it may be just hanging out behind the chamber in either the Assembly or Senate and trying to grab an assemblyman or assemblywoman in a free moment, or scheduling an appointment in their office. Depending on the day of the week. I mean, as most people know, we're in the midst of budget season, so scheduling meetings becomes more difficult. So you do the best you can when you have the opportunity.
Now, it seems to me that the lobbying industry here in Albany is growing, and it may be nudging as much as a $100 million industry now. And you've been involved with it for 20 years. Have you seen any changes other than the fact that it appears that each year more money appears to be spent for lobbying? Have you seen any trends over the past 20 years about how the industry of lobbying has changed?
Sure. I mean, I could point to two dramatic differences. One is the number of lobbyists has become much more competitive industry. Likewise, I think clients have become more sensitized to the role of government and the need to have their voice heard in government. And I'd say, secondly, the definition of lobbying has expanded. I would say 20 years ago was primarily within the confines of the Capitol, making your case, educating, advocating the positions of your clients, and now it has expanded far beyond that to what they call grassroots lobbying, to reaching out to the legislators' districts and those voters and sensitizing them to a particular issue, getting citizen lobbyists engaged, both in the district and likewise on citizen lobby days, which tend to be every Tuesday. People bust themselves into Albany and meet with their legislators to exercise their positions on a particular issue.
And sometimes we note that there are television commercials or radio campaigns that have been taken out either in districts, of certain legislators' districts, in order to encourage some response by the legislator, or just statewide commercials we've seen. And sometimes those commercials are put on by sometimes the thought is that they're put on by various advocates within the legislature. I think Governor Spitzer was behind a group of advertisements last year. Is that correct?
No question about it. And that is I think under the category of taking government relations or representation outside of the Capitol back to the district. Public relations or PR or advocating positions to the media, or whether it be earned advertising or paid advertising, whether it's commercials or ads in the paper, that in and of itself has become a multi-million-dollar industry, and as a matter of fact, a cottage industry, in that there are a number of firms that have emerged that specialize in government relations PR.
Wow, it just continues in that way. I'm sure that some of the clients that you represent are involved in health care, and there's so many different competing interests in health care, and sometimes it's helpful if people can understand, and our citizens can understand, how, for example, how the 3 or 4 different components of our healthcare system are actively each trying to advocate their own position, but in the end, the legislature has to try to put it all together. Any examples in that?
Sure. It is an incredibly complex industry. Simplified, there are 3 sectors. There are providers, and there are a plethora of different types of providers, from hospitals to nursing homes to physicians to physical therapists to pharmacists, all of which are striving, A, to provide quality care, but B, to ensure that they are receiving adequate reimbursement, whether it be from the private sector, businesses who pay in premiums, or from the government in the form of Medicaid or Family Health Plus or other social government programs. The other sector is the health plans, the health insurance industry, which provide coverage, and in an ideal world, they're trying to provide affordable coverage as well as incentivize providers to reach certain standards in terms of quality of care provided. And at the end of the spectrum, or really the center of the spectrum, are consumers, those people who are purchasing coverage at an affordable price, but expect the highest quality and deserve the highest quality of care that's being provided. So you have a lot of competing forces in a system which is clearly somewhat Byzantine. The reimbursement system is very complicated. The rules governing the hospital industry, the medical community, are very complex, and it sometimes work against each other, where providers are not necessarily in the same position on an issue. And likewise, their relationship with health plans, who on the one hand are their partners in providing reimbursement for care, but on the other hand are trying to provide representation for consumers in providing affordable coverage. And there's obviously some natural tensions that result from that.
You've found in the course of your practice that merely having a piece of legislation crafted and adopted the way you advocated is not necessarily the end of your work in connection with that legislation.
Right.
Explain to me how that works.
That's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, there are three components to state government. There's the legislative component, which is the drafting or crafting of laws. The executive agencies, whether it be the health department, the insurance department, tax and finance, they interpret those laws. And a lot of times they will need to promulgate regulations that expand on or fill in the gaps for implementation of those laws. Well, many times those state agencies are in their interpretation of the law is not necessarily consistent with the legislative intent, or for that matter, the letter of the law. They may have, as regulating entities, a different view of what the law should have been. And that oftentimes takes us to the third branch of government, which is the challenging of particular administrative actions in court. So yeah, you will see frequently challenges not only to legislation as being unconstitutional, but to the regulatory implementation or interpretation of those statutes.
Well, for example, in 2004, you were very active in encouraging a piece of legislation that would benefit the citizens of the state of New York involving assisted living, and we often refer to it as the assisted living legislation, which was adopted in 2004. And of course, I know that we'll want to define what assisted living is, but tell me how that's evolved. Even though that bill was passed in 2004, I understand it's still an issue today.
Yeah.
What is assisted living?
You know, that is, this is a very, ripe issue, because you're correct. In 2004, legislation was passed that provided a definition of what is assisted living, which is providing some personal care, some oversight, some health care services to aging independent seniors, or for that matter, independent disabled individuals. Not necessarily the 24-hour supervision that you would need in a more institutional setting like a hospital or a nursing home, but sort of a balance between some oversight, some care, but allowing a senior to live independently. The 2004 legislation, which I happen to have been fortunate enough to work on, was really landmark legislation, because it addressed the issue of defining assisted living, placed some reasonable parameters about regulating assisted living, also placed it in an appropriate spot in the healthcare continuum between senior housing, which is a completely independent environment, adult care facilities or adult homes, and provided some additional segue from independent living to nursing home care. Landmark legislation defined what is assisted living, so that you didn't have these quasi-independent housing distinguished from the assisted living or adult care facility world, and likewise provided a segue to age in place, so seniors can enter into an assisted living facility and stay there as long as they possibly can before they need 24-hour nursing home care. Well, lo and behold, that law has not yet gone into effect. And over the course of the last 3+ years, the health department has taken this 12-page, very straightforward law and promulgated an 85-page regulation, which, depending on who you talk to, is either a great visionary work of art that is somewhat related to the original statute, or places so much of a burden on the industry that it ultimately end up in raising the cost for those seniors that are being provided the care. And that the ultimate resolution of that is still up in the air. The regulation has come out. You know, my guess is there's going to be some continued dialogue and perhaps even ultimately a decision by a court as to whether the agency acted appropriately and consistently with that original statute.
Well, it's certainly very involved, and of course it does, your work ends up involving all branches of government in that way, and to think that there's a 2004 legislation that was adopted by our state legislature, signed into the law by the governor, and still remains not implemented is a concern for all citizens, really. The care for our seniors in various housing opportunities is an utmost concern of many people throughout the state of New York. And you've had occasion not only to work on assisted living legislation, but also legislation affecting our nursing homes as well. Is there anything this year, nursing homes, that's an issue that that will demand some attention or concern, or last year had some attention?
Sure. You know, the issues with nursing homes, like hospitals, is that they are institutions that are trying to evolve with a more healthy, independent baby boomer population that needs less institutional care, and at the same time provide a safety net for those individuals who could not afford to have private nursing come to their home. And oftentimes that safety net is supported by state government in the form of Medicaid, and a very complex Medicaid reimbursement system that in many cases supports the finances of 70, 80, 90% of the home's revenues, and depending on geography and the type of population that the home serves. And Medicaid, as complex as it is, needs freshening up and revisions or reform every several years. And sure enough, I think over the last couple of years, the state has tried to engage in that reform, which creates some natural tensions between providing them with a sufficient amount of funds, but at the same time not busting open the state budget, the state Medicaid budget, which obviously drives 30 to 40% of the overall $124 billion state budget that we're in the process of trying to enact.
It is very expensive. I know in my days as a county legislator at the county level, of course, which was that was the level that actually dispersed many social services funds as well, and it was the largest single component in the county budget, and I bet it still is today. And you're saying state budget-wise, it's very much a big part of that too. So you find yourself not only in the Capitol, though, and as a lobbyist and a governmental relations firm, you find yourself doing other types of things as well besides just being in the Capitol. Will you find yourself before administrative agencies or state agencies working on a variety of issues as well over the course of your practice? Absolutely.
You know, I think when asked, you know, what you do, we help clients solve problems with government, and that problem solution may take us, exercise may take us to the legislature or may take us to administrative agencies, whether it be they need a particular license or there's an enforcement action against them or there's a rule or regulation that has a particular either favorable or unfavorable impact on that particular industry or client. And Oftentimes it'll involve meeting with state agency personnel, whether it be personnel who are career civil servants who've been in an agency for 20, 25, 30 years and know their area of practice as experts, or whether it means meeting with the policymakers at a particular agency, whether it be a commissioner, a superintendent, or a deputy. Again, working with them to ensure that regulations adopted or approvals that are provided are both consistent with state law and are likewise in the best interest of the people of the state of New York.
Now, we spoke earlier about the ever-growing industry referred to commonly as lobbying, and but it is regulated. And is the temporary commission on lobbying still regulating the lobbying industry here in the state of New York?
Sure. The lobbying commission, so to speak, has gone through, there have probably been about 5 evolutions over the last 5 or 6 years of reform to lobbying as well as government representation overall. The most recent iteration basically expired the lobbying commission and created a new commission on public integrity, which has broader jurisdiction over not only lobbyists who represent clients in the legislature or with state agencies, but also some government officials as well. That Commission on Public Integrity was just formed within the last 12 months, and to a great extent, their jurisdiction so far with respect to lobbying has not changed much in that they are basically the same people implementing the same laws and requiring reporting of compensation and expenses and conducting periodic audits to ensure that, that there's compliance with the laws and that the bad apples are weeded out.
What do you have to do to comply? Are there quarterly reports? Do you have to submit a copy of a written contract?
Sure.
What is required?
There are a number of reports that are filed. There are, for a lobbyist, there are bi-monthly periodic reports. There's a registration that's filed. The registration must include a signed retainer by a particular client, which clearly marks out the compensation that will be paid to the lobbyist, as well as any expenses that get included in the compensation. After the registration, you have bi-monthly reports that report the receipt of the compensation, any additional expenses incurred in the lobbying effort, whether it be expenses on behalf of the client or other miscellaneous expenses. And then separate and apart from the lobbyist's registration and periodic reports, clients are required to provide semi-annual reports that monitor or require the reporting of how much is paid, not only to the lobbyist, but with respect to their internal expenses incurred as a result of their own lobbying effort on a particular issue. So it has become a very highly regulated industry. In some cases, appropriately so. I think that there had been some bad actors, but you always try to find that balance between appropriate regulation and over-regulation that stymies or impedes an individual's right to engage in their particular profession.
Now, some years ago, there was an evolution of certain requirements, maybe self-imposed requirements on the legislators by themselves. And there was a big story locally that the local restaurants were going to struggle now because the lobbyists wouldn't be able to have a dinner with a state legislator, and somehow the entire community in Albany would fold because they wouldn't have that access. I don't know whether that really happened or not, or are there regulations on whether you can actually have a meal with a legislator?
Yeah, there are, and it is a very strict rule. I mean, a meal, which is, if a lobbyist picked up the expense of that meal, it would be considered a gift, and that gift is prohibited now under state law. You know, I think that the perception of going out to dinner with a legislator, I think sometimes becomes more embellished, and there's more to it than what actually happens. At least in my experience. I think as you deal with these people all day long professionally, you develop a social bond or a relationship with them, and you go out and engage in a bite every now and again, never talking about a particular issue, but just establishing a relationship and a rapport with a particular legislator, so that when you come in and meet with them, they have a little bit of knowledge that you're married, you have kids, where you're from, and it develops some trust and some comfort. Certainly, there has been some abuse, and I think that led to the enactment of that bright line ban on all meals and gifts from lobbyists to legislators. Has it had an impact? Sure. I think to the extent that you go out for a meal now, it's Dutch. The legislator will pick up their part of the tab. You'll pick up your part of the tab. It still goes on. You still have that friendly banter, and I think it's just taken a different form. You'll have to ask the restaurant industry whether there's been any negative impact in terms of their revenues. It certainly still happens. It just creates a different equation in terms of the legislator having to pay for their own meal.
Well, I can tell you that Colonie is certainly very lucky to have you come here and stay here, having been a native of Long Island and coming up to Siena College and then continuing on at Albany Law School, and now married to an attorney. Is that correct?
A litigator.
Yeah. And two beautiful children as well. And we're certainly pleased that you came with us today and brought us up to speed on the lobbying industry here in Albany. I'm Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.